Hi, welcome. I'm in conversation today with Rebecca Eccles and Louisa Hodge, who head up our LCA team here at Onistic. And today we'll be talking about A2, which is transport to factory. It's also known in other ways as upstream transport. And it's broadly concerned about how all the stuff that you use during your manufacturing process gets to your factory gate. I mean, that's the broad sort of outline of it. And that could be by truck, boat, etc., etc. It follows on from the previous video we did, which was, funny enough, A1, cleverly titled there, where we look at the actual material extraction, i.e. what's in the products you manufacture and how to specify those, how to put those into an LCA. And no doubt there'll be A3, A4, A5 videos following that. So if you want to see the entire series, have a look at the series link and you can sort of tap into the entire series there. During the video, we'll be looking about A2, what is it, what's it for? We'll be looking at any sort of tricks and tips with A2 and an example that we'll use so you can actually see how to enter the data for A2. In terms of the example, we'll be using the same oak table example that we used in A1, and we pretend we're making oak tables with an oak top, metal legs. That's the broader outline of the examples. So, Becca, if we kick off, A2, what is it?
So A2 is the supplier transportation of all those raw components we put into A1. So for example, for our oak table, that'd be the oak wood, the metal legs, the screws. It's just the transport routes for those components.
Okay. And when we look at the transport routes, do we look at UK suppliers only or last point of supply, or do we look at every single step of the transport chain? Say, for example, my oak is cut down in Melbourne, Australia, and it's shipped by a van to Melbourne processing lumberyard, and the lumberyard goes to Sydney, and Sydney. Where do we look at about how far back in that chain do we go?
You go back to the previous supplier. So say if you ordered, well, in your example of oak, say if it got cut at a forest and then it went to a factory to get cut down, and then you ordered it from that factory, you just include the transport route from that factory. So it's the point before you. So
it's who we order it from, broadly speaking. Okay, that's fair. I've got a question here. What's it for? So it seems a silly question, really, but what's it for?
It's to record the supplier transportation.
Yeah, so it helps build out the carbon footprint, and all the emissions factors, but carbon footprint being the major one, of the products that you're producing. And I think it helps separate out, say, for example, our oak table, you might have supplier one that sources all their oak locally and supplier two that ships it in from, real case in point, Canada. One of those will have a better sort of more environmental product than the other. And this A2 module really help bring that to the fore. It exemplifies good practice of buying local. Okay. When we come to look at A2, what data do we need beforehand? If I'm going to be doing it, what data do I need to prep?
So typically you want to know where your suppliers are. If your suppliers are able to provide you transport, like just a rough transport route, obviously they're not going to be in the same route every single time. But if they can give you just a rough default transport route and modes, then that's great. If not, you can make an assumption for that. But generally you just need to know where your suppliers are, and that's the bare minimum information you need to make those assumptions.
So if I've got a variety of different suppliers, I'll be choosing an average, or maybe putting in if, say, for example, one is from Canada, one's local, you'd have that as two separate supply components with the A2, would you?
Yeah. Well, you'd have as two separate components in A1, because I assume those would have different product codes. This would be
okay, in A1, but also following through to A2. Yeah, but if they are broadly the same, then you'd average them out or pick a typical route or something like that.
Yeah, if they're broadly the same, you can average them out. If they're vastly different, I'd recommend recording them as separate.
Independently, okay, fine. So we need the data, and the data we need is what it is, where did it come from, and for most cases, what's it weigh? There's some, so they're the basic sort of gist. There are some minor exceptions to that, but they're the basic gist. And what mode of transport was used to get it from A to B to C to D. Good. In terms of accuracy and completeness, what's the standard here? What do we need to aim at?
So we just need to know a default transport route. This is honestly one of the areas where it's very hard to get very specific data because the transport routes are going to be different every time, especially if it's a heavy goods vehicle. They're going to be changing their routes based on traffic. So just a default route that is representative of your supplier.
Right. Okay, got it. What happens if you just buy it from a web supplier? So say I'm ordering screws and I just buy them from, say, Amazon or something like that. What do I put in there?
We'd need to make an assumption based on that specific product. So if you look on Amazon and it looks like it's being manufactured in China, then you can make an assumption there. Maybe it's come on a container ship, maybe it's come on a plane, depending on the type of product as well. Like a lot of healthcare products might be getting transported on planes. A lot of healthcare products might be getting transported on planes, whereas like a non-urgent product would probably get transported on a container ship. So it's just knowing what's the best assumption there.
Okay, so we make some assumption that I think the one that we used for a lot of the stuff that we did was Amazon is a 10-mile journey on a van. So if you wanted to go to, if you're unsure about kind of an online delivery, say you bought some paper for the office or something like that, whatever it's going to be, that's what I've used previously in previous sort of LCAs. If you look at how to use it, when we come to look at how to use it, should we actually see it in action? Do you want to show the system in action?
So we want to go to this products drop down on the left-hand side, and then we click product advanced, and then it'll come up with a list of all our different LCAs. This is on our demo page. We've got quite a few on here that we've been playing around with. So I'll click into the oak table one we're using for this example. And in the previous video, we talked through this section. So if you're curious, please refer to that video. If we scroll down, then we'll come down to our A2. So on here, this is all the components that we inputted into A1. So they'll all automatically show here, and we just need to add a transport route for each of these. So for example, the metal legs. So as we've already entered the weight of the component in the previous section, we don't need to worry about adding that in here. We just simply need to add the transport route. So again, we can add a title. So we can put legs from supplier 1. And then we've got this drop down as well. So in case you want to switch between, you can change it there.
So just a brief interruption there. So some things marked supervisor only on the screen. That's because it depends on what grade of software you've got, whether you see those things or not. So if when you look at your software, those boxes aren't there, don't worry. It just depends what level of the software you've got, okay?
So for example, let's say our metal legs are being delivered from a UK city. So they may be getting delivered on a heavy goods vehicle. So we use this drop down and we'd select the most applicable mode of transport here. So we've got quite a few lorries.
Loads of lorries. Some are used more than others, aren't they? There's got to be in there that you kind of use over and over and over again.
So I'm going to select 7.5 to 16.2 metric ton lorry, Euro 5. The location, we'll go with Europe since we know it's in the UK. And distance, let's say it's going 150 kilometers.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So, and then you don't have to worry about the secondary transport because there is no secondary transport for this route.
Okay, so we're assuming it just comes from 150k, so we're based in Oxford in the UK, so that'll be coming, for example, from somewhere, not quite Birmingham, just on the other side of Birmingham or something, maybe a bit further than that, but that sort of thing. That seems quite straightforward. Should we do one where he's got like a 2-stage transportation?
So if we click into oak wood, it will just be the same thing again. So wood from supplier 1. Well, I'll put supplier 2 for this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this example, say that we've got our oak wood is coming from Switzerland, for example, and it's traveling 100 kilometers on a heavy goods vehicle in Switzerland, and then it's going to go into a container ship, and then it'll be traveling another 100 kilometers on a heavy goods vehicle in the UK. So that would be a total of 200 kilometers on a heavy goods vehicle. So what I'd want to do here is again select the appropriate heavy goods vehicle. So look for a lorry. So I'll go with a 32-ton Euro 5 lorry. And I'll select Europe, since we know it's Switzerland. And then the distance, it would be 200 kilometers. So we're adding up those 2 separate legs of heavy goods vehicle there.
Gotcha.
And then it's also going to be traveling on a container ship from Switzerland to the UK. So if I search down here and I find the container ship, and then here we've only got a global data point, and then maybe it's 1,000 kilometers that would travel on.
From Switzerland. It's a long way away. Okay, we'll say...
They're going the long route.
Oh, they go the long route. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
And then we just press submit, and then it's as simple as that.
So you do those for all of those 5 components in there.
Yes.
Just really, really sort of straightforward. So as long as you know broadly what mode of transport it's on, and how far it was, and you make the assumptions, that's about it for A2. It's really quite straightforward. So A2, I think, is one of the easier modules to process. Okay, best practices?
I think it's just getting those default routes from your suppliers, noting it down and sticking with that throughout the process.
Yeah, simple as that.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Okay. Any gotchas? Anything that is going to catch people out, in terms of when they're processing it through, they don't say, damn it, and you go, oh, no, you didn't do the such and such.
Yeah, I mean, unless they miss a leg of the transport, that's the only thing I can think of, but this is a fairly straightforward module.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to just click back to LCA and let's just see the results of the stuff we've done so far? It fills it in on the previous LCA table. Just scroll down a bit there, and you can see the GWP total is ticking up on the right-hand side under A2 now. Okay, so in summary, how would you summarize A2?
A2 is super simple. It's just getting default routes from your suppliers, getting a mode of transport and a distance, and the information you've already added into A1 will feed into A2, so it makes it super, super easy.
Lovely. All right. Well, look, I hope that was useful. As I said at the start, this video follows on from the A1 video, and you know what? Following this is the A3 video, so it's all clever titles. If that was useful or interesting, or you have any other questions about carbon accounting, LCAs, getting an LCA for your products, stuff like that, just let us know. Drop a note in the comments, or get in contact with us, and if we can help you, we certainly will. All right, thanks a bunch. Cheerio from me.
Thank you. See you later.
All right.